Hello out there everybody, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about how 2023, in a weird way, might be turning out to be the year of the GameCube. So initially this concept might sound really strange because the GameCube is 22 years old. It first released in 2001. And I'm going to let you guys know right up front near the beginning of this video, it is my personal second favorite video game console of all time, right behind the Nintendo 64. I know that there's a lot of fun conversation and debate that's always going on out there around the GameCube and the Nintendo 64 and which one is considered better, and people have very strong opinions on either side of the conversation, which I find kind of fun and I totally understand. Obviously, we're talking about online discourse, so sometimes people get really crazy with their feelings and defending their opinions, and so that is what it is. Those people can do whatever it is that they feel best. For me, the only thing I'll say before I dive deeper into the 2023 part of this conversation is that both consoles are incredibly important to my time growing up as a teenager and in my early 20s. Remaining a game fan and enjoying Nintendo's consoles and products, and as I also became a gamer that kind of understood the value to all things even outside of Nintendo, because I mostly stuck to Nintendo and Sega for a lot of my life until I eventually realized that everything that's out there is good. And so for me, the reason the Nintendo 64 is my favorite console is just because of how old I was at the time that it came out. I was 16 in 1996 when that console released, and so I experienced the massive shift in all things gaming, going from the 16-bit era, which is my favorite generation of gaming, and what consoles like the PlayStation and Saturn and my fan favorite Atari Jaguar were kind of starting to do with 3D. But the Nintendo 64 came out and really went 3D and changed gaming in such a way, and launching with Super Mario 64, I mean, get out of town. And so even though it's a console that hasn't aged as well as the GameCube, and it also never even got a Metroid game, it's just my favorite because of my nostalgic connection to experiencing the impact that console had when I was a teenager. The GameCube releasing in 2001, sorry, I was 21 when that came out, so still pretty young, and still had such an incredible response to how fantastic that console was. It has my favorite game of all time. It has my second favorite game of all time. It's a great machine, and so that's why the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube are my two personal favorite video game consoles ever. And so, bringing it back to the main conversation here, why are we calling 2023 the year of the GameCube? Well, it's because it just kind of is playing out in such a way, 2023 is, that we're seeing the revival of a lot of GameCube games. In fact, we're only 2.5 months into the year, and we've already had 3 significant GameCube title re-releases, which is really crazy. And there's a lot of conversations around some other titles that we think might also be coming to the Switch or re-released just in general on maybe a variety of consoles, and that those could also be games that were initially GameCube games. And then there's the whole conversation around Nintendo Switch Online, and if we might see GameCube games come to the console in that kind of a fashion. That is kind of a pipe dream fan theory, but it's not totally impossible also. And so I just think it's worth talking about why we're seeing this really weird but also awesome GameCube resurgence in the gaming industry, not just on the Switch, although mostly on the Switch, but we're seeing this great resurgence of GameCube-era games and GameCube titles just having a strong showing in 2023. Now, if we talk about the 3 games that have already come out in 2023 that were initially GameCube titles, we're going to start with the biggest and most important, which, of course, is Metroid Prime Remastered. I mean, how many times can we keep talking about this game? I could probably gush about it forever because I just love it so much. But Metroid Prime was a GameCube game, and we just got the remaster. After 6 years of talking about and theorizing about and hearing rumors about a Metroid Prime trilogy, where we would have had 2 of those 3 games being GameCube games potentially getting re-released on the Switch, we've instead gotten Metroid Prime, the first game, remastered to such a degree that it almost kind of straddles the line of a remake. It's so incredible, so impressive, selling like crazy, the best reviewed game of the year so far, as I talked about in my last video. And that's a huge thing to see a 20-year-old GameCube game being one of the most important and significant releases in the entire year so far, so that already is kicking off the year of the GameCube. A smaller title that may have slipped under the radar for a lot of folks that folks aren't maybe considering in this conversation is Tales of Symphonia. Tales of Symphonia just got a remastered re-release last month as well, and I know that I haven't played it. I hear there's a lot of issues. It didn't get reviewed very well, and people say that there's problems. I don't know the details there, but it did still get re-released this year, and that game was a GameCube game. In fact, it was the first JRPG game I ever enjoyed because I was such a staunch defender and fanboy of the GameCube at the time, and I worked as an assistant manager at GameStop during the GameCube and PS2 era, which was a phenomenal time to work for the company. And so I was so ingrained in the whole GameCube culture and 6th gen culture that once that game released as an exclusive, high-profile JRPG for the GameCube, I was like, well, I'm going to play it because I played every GameCube exclusive that existed, and I actually really loved that game. So that game hasn't made a big splash this year, again, because of the review issues, but it's a notable re-release of a GameCube game that's come out in 2023. Oh, and one more thing. By the way, this is Rob in the future, after I already recorded this video and started to edit, and I realized I forgot something, so I don't know where in the video I'm going to place this audio clip. Hopefully it doesn't feel too out of context. But I realized another 2 GameCube games that are also coming out this year, and it's Baten Kaitos 1 and 2. There is a Baten Kaitos HD collection that is releasing in 2023, so on top of the 3 games we've already seen, Metroid Prime, Resident Evil 4, and Tales of Symphonia, we have 2 more confirmed GameCube games, Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, and those games are awesome, by the way. I'm not excited about this re-release because the original English audio is not included, which kind of ruins the excitement for me, and it's a shame because I love them. But I also own the first one still, so it is what it is. But it still just becomes 2 more games to add to the collection. 5 confirmed GameCube re-releases in 2023 already, on top of everything else I'm talking about in this video. It's nuts. And of course, the last very significant, super high-profile GameCube game confirmed to be getting a re-release in 2023 is, of course, Resident Evil 4. The Resident Evil 4 remake will be releasing this year. Reviews just came out. It's getting stellar reviews. Last I saw, it was at a 93. Could have gone up or down by a couple of points since then, but clearly it's a phenomenal game and a great achievement, and Resident Evil 4 was a GameCube exclusive when it first launched. Now, as many of us who are old enough to have lived through this era knows, at the time, Shinji Mikami swore that this game was going to remain exclusive to the GameCube because it was a bit controversial to have that kind of a game be exclusive to the very family-friendly GameCube back in 2005 when this game released. And Shinji Mikami very famously said he would cut his own head off if the game ever came to the PlayStation 2 or Xbox. And spoiler alert, it did end up coming to the PlayStation 2. And beyond that, when we look at the entire history of Resident Evil 4, at this point, that game, kind of like a game like Doom, ended up getting ported to every single possible video game console almost ever under the sun. It's been available on anything, and it's been re-released like 100 times, because it truly is one of the best games ever made. So, right away, we've got 3 significant GameCube games that have been re-released in only the first 3 months of 2023. Metroid Prime, Resident Evil 4, and Tales of Symphonia. And now what's really interesting about this conversation, and now we get into the fun, kind of speculative part of this whole idea, is what other games might also be coming to modern consoles. You know, most of them would probably be the Switch, because most of these, they would only be, they're Nintendo titles, first party, so they would only have a chance to come to the Switch, right? But what other GameCube games have a chance at releasing this year, or have been in the rumor cycle for a while, right? Well, I think the first 2 that we jumped to, I also discussed on a video in the past few weeks, and a lot of people have been talking about it more and more, is of course The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which have long been rumored and long been desired to come to the Nintendo Switch in some sort of HD port or remaster. They very famously came to the Wii U over the past 10 years with great HD ports, with fantastic gamepad support. And in the Switch era, we feel like it makes a heck of a lot of sense to bring those games over to the Switch as well. And those were also GameCube games. At this point, we've seen titles like Metroid Prime and Xenoblade Chronicles, and Zelda Skyward Sword, which that's a combination of GameCube and Wii games. But we've seen those kind of games get remastered and re-released on the Switch in the Switch generation. And so it stands to reason, with Nintendo's propensity to want to remake and remaster and re-release a lot of their most famous games, we've seen them do that with a few already. So Wind Waker and Twilight Princess becomes so obvious. It's just crazy to think, especially after the re-release of Skyward Sword, it's crazy to think that they wouldn't see a massive opportunity to release those games and make a ton of money and sell a ton of copies. And of course, as we all know, Jeff Grubb himself, who isn't the be-all end-all and he isn't always right, but he clearly knows a lot of things. He seems like a great guy, and he's been correct about some pretty notable things, including most recently Metroid Prime Remastered, along with Emily Rogers, who, to give fair credit, was the first person to talk about it as a rumor. I discussed it as a fan speculation theory years ago, but I didn't know anything about it. That was just me as a fan desiring it and talking about it. Emily Rogers first said it might be happening. Then you get people like Jeff Grubb and Nate the Hate talking about it. It happens. Jeff Grubb also was talking about last year the fact that he thinks Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are also coming. And so now it seems even more likely that those games have a chance at releasing. And so if we see those come out, and if they come out this year, and I know Tears of the Kingdom throws that whole conversation out of whack, but we're just speculating here. So in a world where they did come out this year, that could be another 1 or 2 GameCube games that could also release in 2023. Now, there's 2 other franchises that have titles that I think also could be good candidates to maybe see initial GameCube games get remade or re-released on the Switch in some way. And of course, that's F-Zero GX, which is a GameCube game, a phenomenal game, and is kind of doing a little bit of a rumor circle right now. And then, of course, Star Fox Assault. I would like to throw Star Fox Adventures in there as well because I love that freaking game. But I feel like if we were going to see any GameCube Star Fox game get remastered and re-released, it would probably be Star Fox Assault. And if I'm being honest, Star Fox 64 would probably even be the first candidate, although that gets weird because it's already available on the Nintendo Switch Online, and Star Fox Zero from the Wii U was kind of like a spiritual remake in a way of that game. Miyamoto very much talked about that at the time, so Star Fox 64 gets trickier. So I feel like F-Zero GX and Star Fox Assault become great candidates, and there's been a lot of discussion about those games and those franchises over the years as well. I'm starting to kind of believe that what might make more sense for those 2 games, or those 2 series, I should say, would be for new entries in Star Fox and F-Zero to potentially release on Nintendo's next console, on the Switch 2. That's what I would prefer, and that's what I think might be slightly more likely, but it is worth noting that F-Zero GX, boy, people want that game. People have been asking for it forever. I've been asking for it forever. I have owned that game since day one when it released in 2003, I think, on the GameCube. So that makes it 20 years old as of this year, by the way, which is so mind-blowing. I'm getting so old. I can't believe it. And so F-Zero GX, I mean, that game is still beautiful. Oh my goodness. And if they were to re-release that on the Switch in the modern era with even better graphics, and if they make it online capable, and they just remaster it, even if they didn't go as far as what they did with Metroid Prime Remastered, but if they took F-Zero GX and they gave it some kind of slight graphical bump, if you haven't played that game, you are missing out. And I know a lot of the younger people out there, you probably haven't, because the only way to play it is with a GameCube. I guess people emulate games nowadays, so maybe you've emulated it. If you haven't emulated it, you could only play with a GameCube. And a lot of younger folks out there, you probably don't have GameCubes, a lot of you. And so you are missing out on a truly fantastic, spectacular gem of a game. Sega developing, Nintendo publishing, F-Zero GX. It's phenomenal. I think that game would do very well in today's market. Not everyone agrees, but I do think that that's the case. Star Fox Assault, kind of a different scenario. That was developed by Namco, by the way, before they merged with Bandai. It was one of the last Namco exclusive titles, I believe, before the merger. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while, and I might be wrong. But it definitely was a Namco-only game that Nintendo published. And that's another game, they bumped up the visuals in some way, and if they added online support, because the multiplayer component was really spectacular and very forward-thinking for that game, even though it was offline only, there wasn't a whole lot of online console gaming at the time. It was very rare. And so I just think that that's another game and a franchise people want to see back. People want Star Fox to come back, and so you've got these two great GameCube titles. In the year of the GameCube 2023, Star Fox Assault, F-Zero GX, people want these games, they would buy these games, they would look beautiful, you make them online, Nintendo, you're going to make a killing. You add that to the two other Zelda games, and we've got a lot of GameCube love that we could theoretically see in 2023. And now, like I hinted at the beginning of the video, the last thing that's worth talking about is the possibility of seeing GameCube games come to Nintendo Switch Online in some way. And this, of course, would be different than what we've been talking about already, because we've been talking about singular re-releases that have been updated visually in some way. You know, when you look at Metroid Prime Remastered and Tales of Symphonia, then you get into full-on, undeniable remake territory with Resident Evil 4. These are different scenarios. Then you start talking about HD remasters and re-releases of like Zelda games and of F-Zero and of Star Fox. That's also different than the Nintendo Switch Online. But in a world where GameCube games also come to Nintendo Switch Online, and almost for sure they would be exclusive to the $50 expansion pack, that would also be significant. Obviously, we're not going to be getting, you know, remade games, and they're not going to be getting graphical enhancements. They're just going to be ported, and they do kind of get like an HD sort of wash. I don't know what you call the effect that they do to like N64 games or whatever. They do become sharper visuals. Like they're made to work with HD TVs. If they do something like that, and if that happens this year, that's going to be a massive win for Nintendo, a massive win for Switch Online, and a massive win for those of us who just want GameCube games in any way on the Switch. Is it as exciting as re-released games that have been remade visually in some way? No. But is it still great and exciting? Would it be a great value to Switch Online? Absolutely, because we've been sitting here talking about the incredible library and value to GameCube games. It's a very highly appreciated console right now. It's enjoying a phenomenal resurgence. And so whether all these other games end up getting ported, and if we also get a Switch Online GameCube console, it could potentially be a really fantastic thing for the GameCube in 2023 to see something like that happen, and I don't think it's impossible. So it's a very exciting time. Like I said at the beginning, it's my second favorite console, the Nintendo GameCube. So having 3 notable games released this year already, 2 of them being 2 of my all-time favorite video games, is really fantastic and very special to me and my personal taste because I'm such a fan of the GameCube. But when you look at the idea of Zelda games and Star Fox and F-Zero coming to the Switch potentially with re-releases, again, that's just fan speculation. And again, to be fair, F-Zero is kind of doing the rumor circuit right now, so I don't know how much we can really believe that based on what I've seen, but it's an exciting prospect. I'd love for it to be true. So those games, in a fan theory sense, coming to the Switch this year would be very exciting. And then the Switch Online thing. I don't know if I would put my money on GameCube games coming to Switch Online, but again, I think it's possible. Maybe it would actually be more of a next year thing if it is going to happen, but I also think Switch 2 is coming soon, so that could change things. It becomes really crazy when you start to kind of realize what's out there. So anyway, I love the GameCube. I love these games that we're seeing. Resident Evil 4, Metroid Prime, let's freaking go. Bring the Zelda games. We all want them. And so that's what's going on, and it's why I kind of think 2023 is weirdly becoming the year of the GameCube.